Relax.
All right, beautiful. Then you're more than welcome to move up if you feel so inclined to do so at any point during the lecture.
Want to move over here?
Yeah. TJ, I would move to the side maybe or something, or because I'm gonna be standing up over here. It's up to you.
Yeah, I might just stay here.
It's up to you. You could sit on the side. You could sit over here. Whatever you want. All right. So I'm gonna get started here. I don't think anyone is gonna join today, which is fine.
You do the Google Meet even if nobody joins?
Well, because I recorded.
I thought you used two separate things.
I do, but like the thing only the recorder records the screen, and the Google Meet records. So I'm using my camera. Nice. All right. No, you're good. Okay. So, with anticipation of taking the exam within the next 2 weeks, today I want to, So today I want to go over briefly some of the stuff we already covered with practice management, and then in depth on some more areas of practice management that we didn't talk about. We only had kind of 2 lessons so far for practice management, although I did divide it up into 5 groups. That's fine. A lot of this stuff overlaps, and we kind of really dissected some of the more confusing topics already, right? So we already went through the overview of practice management. Let me do that, say some of those things real quick. This is a little people there. CJ, you have that paper?
I left it.
No, maybe right here. Right. Okay. So for practice management, like I said, I like to break this up into 5 main sections. A lot of it overlaps. But first, we have business structure and policies, and in there I kind of talk about the business main 5 or 7 business structures, however you want to look at it. Sole proprietorship, partnership, and in there's limited and general partnerships, limited liability company, LLC, corporation, C corporation, or S corporation, and finally joint venture. Now I'll talk about some of these main topics once again after I go over it, because I know you weren't there when we went in depth into all the business structures and policies last time. Same for you, CJ. So there's that. There's once more, again, in business structures and policies, there's operational standards, organizational structures within firms, like vertical, horizontal matrix structures. In the doc for lesson number 1, you could see I had diagrams for those. You could check those out. Those are pretty cool, especially when I go over it more. Then there's project workflows, staffing strategies, full-time, part-time, freelance, and hybrid model. There's very specific questions that'll be asked in the exam where they pose a scenario. What's the best staffing strategy here? Very important there also. Next kind of breakdown or section within this division, we have financial management and profitability. Some of the key concepts here are financial terminology, some of those things like revenue, profit, overhead, indirect costs, break-even analysis, utilization rate, stuff like that. A lot of stuff we kind of talked about. This section's more numbers, calculations. I like to think of it as more of accounting, right? Actually dealing with money numbers in this section. Balancing sheets, cash flow statements, overhead rate. How does the cost of operating a business relate to income? Stuff like that. I gave that example. I don't know if you remember last time about the printing, right? That was a good one. CJ watched that video. That was good. Budgeting and forecasting, project profitability, firm-wide financial health, calculating your employees' utilization rate to determine, income, predict income, stuff like that. We got that. Then the next section, you got risk management and insurance. This one I haven't gone in depth with at all so far with you guys, but in here, some of the key concepts are risks in the practice, the insurance types of insurance coverages, and strategies for minimizing those risks. Okay, we'll get more into that later. And some of this stuff some of this stuff is already overlapping within these sections. Types of insurances and common risks relating to different business structures. All that stuff overlaps once you get into the nitty-gritty of it. Next section, we have ethics and regulations. And here is something that is very important. Ben, you were here for that first meeting where I talked about the AIA Code of Ethics, the 6 canons. Those are very important, as I've come to realize, a lot more important than I first made them out to be when I first talked about it. So in here, in this section, ethics and regulations, all about AIA, those 6 canons, NCARB, code of conduct, regulatory compliance, and ethical scenarios. CJ, I think you could see access to the docs. So I mentioned to Ben, if you want to copy the doc and take your own notes under that, you could do that too if it helps. Just an idea. So that's that section. And as for the last section, I'll fill this stuff in as we go. We have contracts and professional service delivery. Here, this is very important. This is probably the most memorization that'll happen, that'll have to do, and anyone will have to do for the tests, for this test specifically. AIA standard AIA contracts. So I think I alluded to it in the first lesson. These contracts that are in the back of the Architect's Handbook for Professional Practice, that are literally contracts. I haven't, to be 100% honest, I haven't gone in and read through all the bullet points and meat and bounds of each contract, but I don't think that's honestly necessary. It won't be, because I won't be able to memorize it. Are you still there? No, stay in the call. Oh, it's because no one's in the call. All right. So I printed these out. You guys take a look at them after. These are the AIA contracts, and I took a note here. They are. I didn't realize this at first, but they are actually broken up and divided by the different types of business structures. So conventional design bid build, construction manager as constructor, construction manager as advisor, those 5 main building delivery methods. So very important here in this last bracket. This is a big one, standard AIA contracts. Scope of services, very important, pretty much your delivery of your scope of work and services that you agree with your client and team, whoever you're making the contract with. Very important. And once again, I'll say it again, project delivery methods, the main 5 are design bid build or conventional design build, construction manager as advisor, CMA, or construction manager as constructor, CMC, or integrated project delivery. All right, here are these if you want to take a look at them. So that's that last kind of section, and like I said, we'll go into in depth into these shortly. But those are the 5 that I've broken it down into, and I do think I cover almost all of the main topics here. Now, these are just obviously as many bullet points as I have, you could go in depth into every single bullet point, make bullet points for those bullet points, and then still have more to read and learn about. These are just the overarching topics and principles. This is what you have to have down packed, all this stuff. And I don't even have 3/5 of it up here right here, right? You have to know the ins and outs of all of this stuff and more, right? This is just what I know. you really, the more you know, the better fit you will be for passing this exam. All right, beautiful. So that is that. So let's go into an overview of what I called lesson 1 real quick. What the hell is this? Project learning, continuing education. Oh, this is this. That's that. Where's the lesson 1? You got it? All right. Okay. All right. So you could open up this lesson 1. We're going to talk about some of this stuff because neither of you were here for this. But I'm going to go through it real quick because I already did record this. And it's a lot to get to. So for business structures, the main thing to keep in mind here and to really understand is the advantages and disadvantages of each business structure, right? Because when you get asked a question related to it, when you get asked a question where a business structure is in the question or is the question, you are either going to be told the type of business structure or you have to identify the type of business structure, okay? So knowing the advantages is where you're really going to, the advantages and disadvantages is where you're really going to have to make that decision based off of, right? So for sole proprietorship, the advantages, simple to establish, low startup costs, complete control for the owner, and pass-through taxation, right? Disadvantages, unlimited personal liability, difficulty raising capital, and business continuity tied to the owner, right? So usually sole proprietorship, one guy, low startup costs, he has no employees, complete control of everything, pass-through taxation, because it's taxed as personal income because it's a guy. And disadvantages, it's a sole proprietorship, not a corporation. So all the liability is on the owner, which is usually the sole proprietor. So that's a huge disadvantage. All his assets are up for grabs if something goes wrong, or liable. Difficulty raising capital because he is by himself. You can only be one person, stuff like that. And business continuity tied to owner. So there's that. That's for small, low-risk business and sole practitioners. All right, we got partnership. Nice. That was second one is like a million times easier. Yeah. So we got a partnership. There's general partnership and limited partnership. Advantages for a general partnership are combined resources and skills, relatively simple to establish. Disadvantages, unlimited personal liability for partners. Once again, it's the way I kind of think about it is a proprietorship of 2 or more people, right? That's actually the definition. Definition of it is 2 or more individuals share ownership and responsibilities. They own everything, pass through taxation as well to both of them. They're both personal income, but then again, they do not have the advantages of a limited liability company or corporation where liability is passed on to the company instead of the owners or practitioners themselves. Limited partnership is kind of the same. In this case, it includes general partners and limited partners who contribute financially with limited liability. So, limited partnership, someone has more responsibility than the other, and someone contributes more financially versus the other. Right? So that's there. An example of this is, all these, I just want to add, all these business structures are not for architecture only. These are business structures. We are learning about business, right? That's why this test is unfamiliar to. All the material here is mostly unfamiliar to, and all of us, I would agree. So example of a limited partnership, a real estate investment firm where general partners manage the business while limited partners provide capital but have no management role, right? That's just one example. A general partnership, usually those are balanced. All right, so here's one that we are probably all familiar with in some capacity. We have a limited liability company, or LLC. Probably heard of it before. Definition is where it combines the limited liability of a corporation with the tax benefits and flexibility of a partnership, right? So advantages: limited personal liability, pass-through taxation, and fewer formalities than a corporation. So almost anyone starting off is going to do an LLC. Great for scaling, great tax benefits, and uh, great liability advantages, right? They're not liable. It's a limited liability company, unlike a general partnership or sole proprietorship. Um, Best for small to medium-sized businesses seeking liability protection with operational flexibility, right? Um, and then we have corporations, C corporations and S corporations. These are very in-depth and very intuitive, but just to kind of sum them up, they are a separate, or at least for a C corporation, it is a separate legal entity owned by shareholders, right? So already this is a huge business structure going on. Definitely not your startup kind of firm. The advantages here are limited liability, unlimited number of shareholders. Keep in mind that, and easier to raise capital. The disadvantages here are double taxation. So really unfortunate or really bad tax advantages, or really good disadvantages, however you want to look at it. Large businesses for those who are seeking significant investment. Now, on the contrary, we have an S corporation. The S corporation is very similar to a corporation or a C corporation, but different in the sense that it avoids double taxation by allowing income to pass through to the shareholders. I'm not going to explain the structure of a corporation, but if you do have time to figure that out, the income passes through um, the the top people. It goes through to the shareholders, which are at the bottom of the company. And another difference here is, unlike C corporation, S corporations are limited to 100 shareholders, where C corporations have an unlimited number of shareholders, all of whom must be U.S. citizens and residents. That's really unnecessary information. An example here is a family-owned construction company or small marketing agency that wants to avoid double taxation. Boom. And finally, we have a joint venture. You might have heard an example of this as well. Temporary partnership between two or more entities to undertake a specific project. Advantages: shared expertise, resources, and risk. Disadvantages: complex agreements and potential disputes. Those are all very true. Example of this: you're an architect, you win the bid or design competition for a skyscraper. You're a small company. You need to do a joint venture for this specific project with an engineering firm. You set very specific agreements and liability agreements for this specific project, and that is it. Okay, so that's an example of a joint venture. Okay, so those are the 5 business structures that will be covered in the exam. All right, so those are those. Any questions? Didn't think so. All right, so we got. All right, so we have office policies. I didn't go in depth at all on this, but we have employee manuals. There's a lot of standards. This test is practice management, right? Practicing the management of architecture in a professional scene, right? So if you're managing it, you have employee. And in most cases where you have employees, you're going to have employee manuals, right? There's a bunch of stuff that goes into that. A lot of code of conduct, a lot of ethical standards and questions, ADA, can't dispute, can you work? That's a stupid question. Um, so there's a bunch of stuff to that. I just listed some of the basics: code of conduct and ethics, employment terms, hours, overtime, benefits, leave policies, anti-discrimination and harassment policies, grievance and disciplinary procedures. Okay, then there's operational standards, define workflows, certification protocols, quality assurance measures. This is like really business heavy stuff right now, right? So we'll skip by that because we don't have much on it anyway. And we'll move towards the organizational structures. I actually have the diagrams here on this, but I'm using it. So you guys can look on the doc if you want. There's three main organizational structures here. We have horizontal, matrix, and vertical structure. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, or to all of them. And some of them are obviously pretty straightforward. I don't think you'll actually have questions that ask you what this structure is, but it is important to understand how a project moves through a firm, right? So in the example of a vertical organization structure, you have a principal, owner of a firm, architect, whatever, and there are project managers, and that work moves from the principal to the project manager to the designer, and then production and construction. It moves linearly through people, goes through phases, stuff like that. Then it moves through teams, right? So someone does this part, check, moves to the next team, check. I draw it, check. Owner signs off, check. Goes through paperwork, check, and then DOB or Department of Building stamps it off. That's kind of vertical, passes through different departments. A horizontal organization is where this is more common, especially I like to think. There's a principal project manager, and they are working on multiple projects, right? So the project manager has his hand in a bunch of different things, and isn't just kind of working departmentally, right? He's not just working in one part like a vertical organization is. And then a matrix structure is honestly the most common. It happens. A lot of these in a real world scenario is a mix of all of these. But in the matrix organization, it's the most realistic, right? So you have principal or owner, then you have project manager, and then the work goes from the project manager to the designer to the production phase, then to construction phase, design phase. It moves through all these parts. Everyone has a hand in it. Everyone's on the loop, right? Project remains in the same team with input from office specialists. Okay, so that's some organizational stuff, and I have some bullet points for it too. What else we got here? Staffing strategies. This is important to understand. You'll get asked questions, like I said earlier, based on this information. I think you did the second test, right? You saw a question like this, right?
Yeah.
It was asking, pull it up. Full-time, part-time staff, freelance / contract work, and hybrid models.
Yeah, it was asking what type of organizational structure is illustrated. Are you talking about the next one?
The next one, it's about, it should have like freelance in there.
Managing the staffing strategy with its advantages. That's fine.
No, not that one. Right here, boom.
That's
Right
just-
here. No. Oh yeah, isn't this one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just
Okay, so like, for example, you have some of these advantages of different staffing strategies. You have cost effective, or you have full-time, part-time, freelance. Cost effective and smaller workloads would go to part-time staff. Stability and team continuity would go to full-time staff, and access to specialized short-term skills. That is one that is disputed a lot of times, but goes to freelance, right? You want short-term specialized skills in one department. You don't want to hire a full-time employee that works just on waterproofing details, right? But you say for a project, you need high-quality waterproofing details. Freelance guy, you hire him for this one job, right? So that's an example of why this might be important to understand. Okay, so that was really fast. What happened?
Said it's cinematic.
For what? Oh, that's. It shows you your answers? Shows you're correct?
No.
You just know. Alright, so that was really fast for that first part. Great job, everyone. Any questions so far?
Do we take the test now, or is there another part?
We're going through all of them.
He's going through lesson 2 and after we start lesson 3, then we'll take lesson 3 test. No?
This test that I deemed number 3, test number 3, doesn't have specific questions. Has specific questions from practice management, not these 3. Practice test number 1 or number 2 is all on business structures and policies. It's very easy also, but at this point we're just focusing on this exam because it's just covers. It goes back and forth, all these things. All right, so I'm gonna cover. I don't have financial management profitability. It is important though. Let me just read off the overview. I left it. So I did kind of breeze upon it in this overview. So financial terminology, financial management and profitability. Some of the things here. We have financial terminology, revenue, profit. You guys understand that. Overhead. I explained it to you before, right? Cost of, how does the cost of operating a business relate to income? You can't just be billing clients the cost of paper. You have to charge an overhead. You're providing the paper, right? You're storing the paper. You give it to them, right? So you have to charge an overhead rate to make a profit, keep the business running, right? Overhead, direct and indirect cost. That's a big one. Let me lock in real quick. Direct and indirect costs. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's important. Come back to it maybe. Break-even analysis. This is kind of a firm-wide thing. How much revenue is needed just to cover expenses? So you do your employees' utilization rate. Calculate how much they make. You add up all the salaries of your employees. You have your salaries. You have rent. You have rent for your business. You have what's some other things? You have insurance. Right? You have licenses, right? License for your architecture firm. All those things are just to break even. That's before profit. So that's a break-even analysis. What does it take to keep the firm running? Okay. And overhead is just how you make that, how you charge that for that analysis. All right, so we have that break-even utilization rate. We all know utilization rate, billable hours over total hours worked. Now, I explained CJ this earlier. He was a little confused. You're in the case or scenario of a test or a question on the test, unless specified otherwise, you are always going to assume a 40-hour work week. So total hours worked, you're always working 40 hours a week, right? And I highly doubt that it would specify anything else, but you never know. And then billable hours is probably the hardest part of those questions, understanding and deciphering what is billable to the client. Drawing is billable, project managing, writing emails is not billable, stuff like that. I should be writing this down. I don't care. I do care. Creating and interpreting financial reports. We have income statements, profit and loss statements. That's a big one. Not going to go over it. Very important there too. Balance sheets and cash flow statements. All of these are really important. I actually have. Let me just open this up because I'm blanking on a lot of it, but it's all important. It's all in this first section of this book right here. But it's all, like I said, kind of. It's all like accounting based, numbers, cash flow. I have it right here. Boom. Okay. Setting budget, sample cash flow statement. You got office rent, payroll, payroll A, payroll B, payroll C, phone, internet, utilities, computer upgrades, software, other taxes, other insurance, and marketing. Subtotal. So running a small firm is expensive. This adds up, this diagram right here. $20,000 a month. Wow.
Well,
Cut! Oh God, that makes me want to say something so bad. Oh my God. Okay, so building in a profit allows the firm to save money and save a rate. Okay, so like in the example of this, in the example of a cash flow statement, this is a really easy way to determine if your firm's going to make money, right? You calculate all your expenses, all those, boom, boom, boom. You come up with a subtotal of what it costs to run your firm, $20,000, right? Then you have to make a profit. You have to make a profit as the owner, shareholders, whatever it is, right? You have all your payrolls on there. Your employees are paid. All your things that to cover the operation of the firm are paid, and then you want to make a profit. So you say 20% profit margin. Is that what you want to make? Is that what you need to make? You put you multiply 20% of that $20,000 budget or subtotal, and then you add that together, and then you have total expenses $25,000. You have to make $25,000 for that cash flow, right? How much cash has to be coming through your firm to keep it alive? That's the cash flow. That's the point of the cash flow. Let's see if I can find some of this other stuff that I blanked on. It would be over here, because this is really good stuff here. Reimbursable expenses. It's a good one. Oh, billable and non-billable, break even. Net multiplier. It is all really good. So profit and loss right here. So this is a really good one. I'm not going to go through it. It's too in depth. All right. So that's all really important stuff. Budgeting and forecasting, project profitability, firm-wide financial health. Right. It's all about knowing what comes in and out of your firm, what you're charging. It's a huge thing, right? A lot of times people don't get work is because their premiums are just too high. Their profit margins are too high, or they paid their employees a lot. They have high salaries to cover. So it's all really about how much you're making, how much you're charging. And understanding how that relates to keeping your business alive is very important to understand. Okay, so that was financial management and profitability. Very important stuff to understand, especially this test is practice management. So definitely have to go back at another time and revisit that more in depth. So as for these last three sections, they are not as in depth aside from the AIA contracts in the last section. The AIA contracts.
Below risk management.
Pardon?
Below risk management.
Yeah, those are specific contracts. There's a whole list. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good. So this is the right one. Practice management overview. It's not the right one. Okay. So we have risk management and insurance. How are we doing on time? 34 minutes. Nice. Let me take some water.
There's a twist to
Pretty good at that, huh? Thanks.
you're pretty good teacher.
Teaching.
No, you're going.
I appreciate it. I was thinking about doing it. I think if I pass it, I think I'm gonna do that regardless. But I could start a club, just teach because this is all information. I put a lot of work into this. I could share it back. Anyone that wants to join, maybe next year or something, if I have some tests passed, just teach people, like do a meeting in the cloud room or something.
You could teach a class for marriage.
Well, we'll see.
Because we don't have any testing.
I know. All right, so we have risk management and insurance. Okay. I'm just going to go over some of this stuff straight from this doc. But we have common risks in the practice. They are a lot. You take on a lot of risk. Insurance is high, and it never goes away, right? If a building ever fails, the architect is always liable first, right? Then it's the builder, and third is the owner, unfortunately, right? So in the case of a 100-year-old building, architect's dead. A 100-year-old building collapses, kills 5 people. Architect, he's dead. He's not liable. Contractor, he's dead. Not liable. Whoever owns the building is liable, right? So that's how it works. Many cases of that coming back to bite owners in the butts. Anyway, so there's a lot of risks that architects take on when designing and practicing. So poorly written contracts can lead to disputes, liability issues, or even financial losses. And this is not only within the contracts. It doesn't apply for this test, but in your plans as well. Everything has to have noted. You have to cover yourself. You have to say contract GC to verify in field, master plumber to verify everything is plumb, stuff like that. Very important stuff there, but it's also important when you are writing the contracts because it could be bad. Contracts should be clearly defined as far as responsibilities, fees, and the scope of services or work goes. Failure to negotiate fair contract terms can result in undue risk. Okay. So client disputes, miscommunication, or unmet expectations can lead to legal conflicts, sued, in jail, all that stuff, lose all your assets, you're liable. Clients may dispute fees, design decisions, or project delays. This is a very big one. There's a whole thing about it I think I talk about as far as your delivery of your scope of work. You do a design contract, you agree to a design contract with a client, and you give them a design, and they say you're supposed to give me floor plans with dimensions, architectural schematic floor plans, and in the contract you specifically said preliminary designs, floor plans only. You're covered. Can't go wrong there, right? Design errors or omissions, inaccuracies in drawings or specifications can lead to costly construction mistakes. Errors may result in rework, project delays, and financial claims. All stuff that kills you, right? Strong quality control process is essential to catch potential mistakes clearly, right? This is why we do markups on our plans. I miss 6 notes. I send out the plans, deck falls over, we're liable, something like that. So you get reviewed. You review your drawings. You say GC to ensure, stuff like that. Stuff like that. Cover yourself. That's how you prevent those mistakes. So there's a couple different types of insurances. All are very niche, I like to say, other than professional liability insurance. Yeah, you might have heard this before, professional liability insurance. It's also known as malpractice insurance. You might have heard that in illegal terminology as far as law goes, because it's the same thing. Professional liability insurance protects against claims arising from professional mistakes, negligence, or omissions in design. Okay, and you have to have this whether you are sole proprietorship or corporation. Either way, you have to have this liability insurance. Then we have general liability insurance. Covers third-party bodily injury or property damage occurring at the firm's office or job sites. Very important there. Workers' compensation insurance. Don't need it if you don't have employees. So sole proprietors, sole practitioners do not require it. Required by law firms with employees or officials of employees. covers work-related injuries and medical expenses. Someone's out sick with a disease, surgery, they get paid, stuff like that. Insurance covers that. Property insurance, you have a printer, you have a plotter, gets stolen, broken, insurance covers it. Protects the firm's physical office, equipment, and assets from damage or theft. And then cybersecurity insurance protects against data breaches, cyber attacks, and loss of digital records. My company works cloud-based. I go on the server. That's how I do my work. Didn't even think about that. It's very important, We work with a company in Greece. That's where our servers are, in Greece. They could just take all the information if they really wanted. I guess that's why you need cybersecurity insurance. Boom. Some other things. We have proper documentation, maintain detailed records of all client communications, contracts, and design changes. Use written agreements to form and formalize approvals in writing. Nothing means anything unless it's written down, right? Word of mouth does not mean anything, and you have to have everything in writing all the time, especially with contracts and agreements. No verbal agreement holds up anywhere. We have clear client communication, set realistic expectations regarding design, budget, and schedule, regularly update clients on project progress and potential issues, and then quality control process. Boom. Some important documents here, and these are like the three main AIA contracts. Like I said, I haven't even read any of them, but the title of the contract pretty much gives you an overview as to what the entire contract is about. So we have A101. A101 as the year it was made. Or is implemented. A101 is the standard form of agreement between owner and contractor, where the basis of payment is a stipulated sum. That is the document title. That's a very important one here. A201 is general conditions of the contract for construction, and B101 is standard form of agreement between owner and architect for use on a sustainable project. Oh, sorry, that's for sustainable projects. Standard form of agreement between owner and architect. So very important contracts to understand the agreements you form, right? And this is all for professional practice. You have a business. You use these contracts to create agreements between between contractor and owner and architect, right? These basic ones are the ones that we know. Owner or agreement between architect and environment regarding those canons. Owner and architect, contractor and architect, stuff like that. So those are the big ones. All of these are important though. Should at least know the titles, document titles. So those are those. Oh, that's risk management and insurance. Okay. Whew. Okay. We have ethics and regulations for the next section. All right, we have. I gotta stand up again. Ooh. Oops. All right. We have AIA Code of Ethics. CJ, you don't know anything about this. You're informed. You know that these are very important. The AIA, American Institute of Architects, is a group established a long time ago, and kind of regulates the practice of architecture, but is not at all associated with NCAR, National Council of Architectural Recognition Board. I think that's what it stands for. That kind of just manages the licensure and who gets a license, stuff like that. But they do play a huge part into the overall practice of architecture. And
so basically, a code of ethics is like studio rules.
No. Okay. They're regulations and a code of ethics for architects, not just for studio. They have a bunch of different canons. They have 6 of them. and each delegates the relationship between architects and whatever it kind of says. I wanted to say something else, and I can't remember, so we'll just go into the canons. We have Canon 1, general obligations. Oh, why am I reading this? Oh, this is just key points of the canons. I thought I actually had them here. I'm just going to read the year of canons because the name pretty much says it all.
Oh, why don't you go ahead and try and explain them just from the bullet points?
Right here. Yeah, sure. Oh, all right, fine. So we have general Canon 1, general obligations, maintain honesty, integrity, and competency in professional practice. Seek continuous professional development. Canon number 2, obligations to the public. Prioritize public health, safety, and welfare. Avoid discrimination and uphold environmental responsibility. Canon number 3, obligations to the client. Serve the clients fairly and professionally with a standard of care. It's another big thing I'm not going to get into. And avoid conflicts of interest. Obligations to the profession is canon number 4. Uphold ethical practices and respect contractual responsibilities. Obligations to colleagues is canon number 5. Treat employees and peers with respect and fairness. And canon number 6, obligations to the environment. They're pretty much rules of thumb, right? Very important in this exam for sure. Boom, that's the A.R.E. Code of Ethics. I did this that was just the first page. NCARB, Code of Conduct. This is all just boilerplate stuff, right? NCARB has their own code of conduct. It's not AIA's code of ethics, but it's all the same stuff. You know, it's pretty much like you think of it, an employee manual for being an architect and employing other people in the world of architecture. Stuff you have to follow, right? In AIA, I'm not going to get into it. Okay, so there's that. Then there's regulatory compliance. This I talked about a lot in the first lesson with licensure requirements, right? Each state has specific licensure requirements, including exams, experience, and continuing education. Architects must obtain a license to practice legally, and each state has specific licensure requirements set by its architectural registration board. And then the NCARB helps standardize these requirements across the states, but variations do exist, which we are aware of. Key components of licensure we know are education, AXP program or architectural experience program. That's our hours, right? You need 3,740 hours across the 6 divisions to get a license. You also need to pass the A.R.E. 5.0, all 6 divisions. There's state-specific requirements. Here's an example. California's supplemental exams. That's for earthquakes, pretty much. Florida also has one. It's for hurricanes, right? Otherwise, the NCARB standardizes the licensure requirements for architecture. Thus, the A.R.E. 5.0, the 6 divisions. Background checks, ethics exams, and professional references may be required. This is not going. State and federal regulations, compliance with ADA, building codes, and zoning laws. We know that's important. See, this is a good example of stuff we don't need to study as much because based on our own experience. We don't need to understand that the international building code is important. And I say right here, key regulatory areas, ADA, IBC, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, state-specific building codes, zoning and land use regulations, occupational health and safety. What is that? OSHA, very important, good job. NHPA.
Wouldn't it be safety and health?
No.
What are the acronyms?
Doesn't matter, keep going.
Yeah. NHPA, National Historic Preservation Act, or landmarks, I've dealt with them myself. And then energy codes and sustainability regulations, all stuff we know and love very much. Continuing education obligations. There's a lot of stuff in this one, ethics and regulations. This is just stuff. Not really that important here, especially for this exam. Conflict of interest. What do we got? Nothing here. Are you following along?
Mhm.
Oh, nice. Very professional. Yeah, there's nothing much else. There's nothing much else here in this one. This is pretty much, stuff I kind of talk about, regulations for exams, licensure, and ethics, stuff like that. Then we got for 5 contracts and professional service delivery, standard AIA contracts. Okay, so to help set up a project for success, it's important that the client and architect establish a mutual understanding and agreement on its intent as well as on the expectations of performance of all parties involved, contractor, architect, owner, whatever it may be. The architect must enter into a professional services agreement to define the project service expectations. Whenever there is a problem concerning architectural and engineering services serious enough to include attorneys and a dispute resolution process, the contract for services will be the initial document referenced by both sides, right? That owner wants those schematic plans. They're referencing your professional contractual agreements first, okay? So that's where the AIA contracts come into place, right? So architects should be familiar with the key IAA contract documents that define project roles and responsibilities. A101, A201, B101. B101, owner-architect agreement, defines the architect's scope of services. Like I said, I haven't looked at these. I'm pretty sure they're just kind of standardized forms that you use as a template to write all your contractual agreements. Same thing, owner-contractor agreement specifies contract sum, project timeline, payment schedule. General and A201, general conditions of the contract for construction. That stuff. I'm sure by next time I will have an example of a contract, one of these contracts, and I guess the top most important ones. These 3 are definitely the most important. I would agree. But a broader list. This is very important here. Scope of services. This is kind of what I was talking about before, also with the agreement between the owner and architect. Architectural services. I have a little reference here in Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice, page 952. This is a basic breakdown of some of the different possible scopes. On that page is really where it's at, but I have some examples, some basic overviews here. Basic services include standard services in the contract, schematic design, design development, preliminary design, construction documents, bidding, and construction administration. Additional services is something else. Services beyond the standard contract, consulting, interior design, feasibility studies, zoning analysis. That's actually a real one that I've come across, right? So you have a contract with someone. For example, we don't have a contract with a client that wants a zoning study on a piece of a lot he wants to buy. We've done that before. We get a call in the office saying, hey, I'm looking to buy this lot. What could I build on it? That's usually what happens. You meet a client for the first time and they don't know the procedure. say, okay, we'll do a zoning analysis. They give you the site information, you look it up, right? There's no contract for that. It's an additional service. It's a really, really good example. And the same goes with other stuff. What else we got here? International Energy Conservation Code. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Contract amendments. Modifications to scope, timeline, and fees must be documented formally, right? That's very important. Just all about documentation and risk and managing your risk and insurance in your company, right? You don't want to agree to something you aren't getting compensated for, and they don't want to not get something that they are paying for, right? And then once again here I go over the project delivery methods. Once more, and this is very important. Like I said, all this kind of ties all together. These delivery methods are in like all the exams, especially the two larger ones. But here it relates to contracting, right, and writing a contract for a client. So and all the AIA contracts you'll have to use. So if you're doing design bid build, you have to have A101, you have to have A201, B101, whatever. You have to have contractor and owner agreement. You have to have owner and architect agreement. You have to have owner, architect and contractor agreement. And that goes hand in hand with selecting the right project delivery method. There you go. Anyone have any questions? That was a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah, can you repeat it?
No, that was a lot of stuff.
Spoke for an hour.
And you listened. Good job. No, that was a lot of stuff. And that was just the overviews, right? We need to. I need to know all that stuff. I need to know in depth. I don't even know what a contract looks like. And that's just one of the points. Test isn't whenever I want to take, but it's
2 weeks is enough time.
Did you already pay for it?
I didn't even pay my Form 1. Form 1 is professional licensure fee for New York State, $400. I didn't do that yet.
You want to make sure that you know all this stuff before you
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Oh, wait. No, I'm not ending the Zoom call.